Hello and welcome to Trying Times. My name is Carmen, and if you're new here, then hello, we're friends now. And if you're returning, then thank you so much for listening, first of all, and coming back. That means the world to me. I don't know what else to say, but that means a lot to me. So if you've listened to the show before and you've come back because you enjoyed the content, thank you. I appreciate you. Today's episode is going to be a little different from past episodes I've done because, in all honesty, when I sit down to record, I have to be very much in a headspace to record. I think that's kind of like a normal thing. When you're doing something, you want to be very in that mindset for it. So today I'm sitting down because I am very much in the headspace to record and felt like recording, but I did not prepare many notes for what I want to be talking about today. So normally when I sit down and record, I don't have a script per se, but I have this kind of huge note that I follow that has all these points written down on it based on a certain topic or a certain thing I want to focus on, or if I'm telling a story about something that happened, I have notes about it so that I don't forget. It keeps me very on track. Today's episode, though, I'm choosing to sit down and record without a lot of notes. So I have 3 things in front of me of what I know I'm going to be talking about, but let's just see how this goes. It's a new year, so it's a new chapter for Trying Times. It's a new chapter for a lot of people for a lot of things. So I just figured I'd give this a shot and see how I like it. And if I don't like it, then back to the blueprint of notes I go, because that helps me a lot. I feel like this will help me in a different way to kind of just talk off the top of my head, and sometimes the best memories come from that. I use that very loosely with today's subject because today I wanted to talk about the trying times of high school. It's interesting. I think no matter what era you grow up in, high school is forever just this awkward, uncomfortable, very uneasy thing that everybody just has to go through in life. There are so many things that take place in the halls of a high school that are just cringy and weird and just I don't know. Cringy is the only word that comes to mind for me. I know when I was in high school, I hated it. I hated being a teenager. I hated the things I would witness around me. I hated a lot of it. And that sounds so negative, but not in a bad way, but more so just I felt so uncomfortable as a teenager that I felt like everything around me was forever also uncomfortable. So I don't know if I'm describing that well at all, but I just felt so uncomfortable all the time. I felt like everyone else was also very uncomfortable all the time. And there didn't even necessarily have to be a reason for why everyone felt uncomfortable. It was just the unspoken thing. Maybe it was for me at least, or some people I knew, but it just felt uncomfortable all the time. And then when you kind of look back on it, that felt uncomfortable. I think there's just so many components when you look back on it that kind of aid in making things uncomfortable. The whole concept of making friends, it can be easy, it can be very difficult. It depends. It's so different for everyone else. And then there's the whole other component of that of relationships, whether that's platonic or romantic. That's always very dramatic and always such a big deal. So that's kind of funny to think back on now, but in the moment, it's the most uncomfortable thing in the world. So there's that. And then there's the whole other side component of parties, which to be fair, as a teenager, I did not like parties. I can honestly say that now at 26 years old, I still don't really like parties. And that's not all parties I don't like, but house parties. I just can't really get behind it. If it's someone that I am really close with and they're having a party, then yeah, I'm stoked to be there. But if it's just a random thing where you're showing up and it's I don't even really know who's throwing this party, I more than likely won't care to be there. I feel like today's episode, I'm just I don't care about this. I don't care about this. This makes me uncomfortable, but it's the unhinged truth, to be honest. I'm not really big on partying in certain aspects. And so one of those would be that, going to a random house party, which was a very big thing in high school. I think honestly, in all of my high school years, I went to maybe 2. And I have no regrets about that. I don't regret that I didn't go to more. I don't regret that I went to the 2 that I went to. It was just I went to these 2 because other friends that I knew were also going. So I was cool, if I feel bored or awkward or all of the above, I'll have people here that I can chill with and have conversation with, and it doesn't need to be this whole thing. So that was also a big thing for me. I think in high school that I noticed, like, that was also just like uncomfortable a lot of the time and for no reason. I found the most that I ever enjoyed myself at any sort of like a party or get together. I think I like to use the word get together more because it's like that could be anywhere between like 3 to 30 people, but you're just comfortable or chilling. It could be even more people than that, but you're just like calm. I feel like as soon as someone puts the word party in front of something, there's just higher stakes at hand. I don't know why. But so I went to get-togethers. Let's say that. I went to a handful of get-togethers during my high school years, if you will. And that in itself, like, I preferred more than the whole party because I don't know if you've watched the movie Project X. I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. It came out a while ago, but I feel like for a certain point in time, that was like the standard of what everybody expected a party to be, or like a house party to be. Everyone was like, it's going to be like this. It's going to end so crazy. Something super cool is going to happen. And it never, in my opinion, it never went that way. Or if I saw things on like Snapchat or Instagram, which were just kind of like, this makes me sound like a dinosaur. Those things were just becoming very big when I was in high school. They were not just another form of conversation the way that they are now. They were very new to the game. So those things were like anything and everything was being posted on there. And it was like the way to know what was going on too. Very similar to how it is now, but it was like a different, I think, pressure behind it. So if I ever saw anything on like Snapchat or Instagram, it was always like trying to navigate that narrative to be like very Project X or like this is so crazy, like so much is happening. And I never really cared. Like, I never felt like I was missing out on it because I was just like, oof, that seems like something that will make my anxiety go through the roof, or that seems like something I just don't care to be part of. So I just didn't do it. That was a huge thing. I know partying was a very big thing in high school. I got a little more into it, I think, in university, but even then I wasn't really crazy about it. Like, I preferred hanging out with friends. And again, if that turned into like a get together, then that was cool. If it didn't, that was cool. I never really got into like the clubbing thing. Oh my God, I have like horror stories about that from university, but that's a whole different topic. So back to high school. This is what me talking off the top of my head is like, by the way. It's just like I will start talking about one thing, we're on a good track, and then another thought pops in and I just go off onto a completely different tangent. So this is today's episode right here. But I think the biggest thing with high school that makes it kind of uncomfortable, or generally this trying time, is something that everybody has to face. It's the fact that at the very end, you have to decide what you're doing next and like kind of get a little bit of that sneak peek into your future and kind of what you want to do with that time, because that's fully in your hands. Maybe it's not. I know everybody has different influences. Like, you can have friends maybe impacting your decision, family, relatives, whatever it may be. There's a lot of different factors, or maybe even just your personal life situation that could very much impact your decision too with what you want to do next, whether that's proceeding to enter the workforce right out of high school and maybe make some connections and kind of start your career out right there and then, whether that's going to college, whether that's going to university. It's all different for everybody. I think the most important thing to know, though, regardless of whatever you choose, is that whatever you choose is it's not permanent in some ways, and in some ways it is. So for some people, they might decide to go to the post-secondary route and choose a college or university program, and in turn, they might find out that they actually don't like what they chose. So that's not such a simple fix, but also it is a simple fix in maybe researching what else stands out to you. Whether that means pulling out of that and kind of staying in a different like moment in your life and just kind of researching what you like to maybe take on a different program, then it means doing that. If you know right away, I don't really like this, but I like something else, then yeah, you can switch your major and kind of like take on a completely different route for your career, which is exciting. So in that instance, I think those are kind of like not too terrible of things that can be quote unquote fixed or changed to suit your needs a little bit better. And in another note, I think if someone decides to take a year off or maybe even a couple years off because they just don't know exactly what they want to do, and then later on they choose to go to school, or later on they slowly work their way up the ladder, I guess, and are able to find a career path that they enjoy, I think that's amazing too. So those are definitely the things that are not talked about in high school and not the things that are, I think, promoted in high school, because it's kind of something you just have to figure out on your own. And it's something that a lot of people can't really give guidance on too, I think, because I think if something like that is shared, then people are just going to feel a little bit more like chill with it in a way and not take it as seriously, which like I get is awful, but also is like important at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense. I think that's really interesting that like obviously teachers might have gone through this themselves, where like I'm sure there's one teacher out there who has entered their post-secondary program studying something completely different than teaching or education. And maybe later on down the line was like, you know what, whatever this is not for me. And they switched that into teaching or education. And then that actually got them into the career that they're in now. So I think that's something that obviously if a teacher were to share with a student, it's maybe providing insight that they won't fully understand till they actually need to understand it or something of that sort, if that makes sense. Like it's like giving someone a cheat code and being like, well, you can pick this, but then later on you can change it. So it definitely, I think, changes that story and that narrative for someone else who is younger and is in a much more formative point of their life that requires obviously having to kind of brainstorm what they think is important to them or what they believe is what they want to work on and that sort of thing. So high school in that already is just a lot. Furthermore, I think you're going through this period of not only like going through the changes and dealing with awkwardness and discomfort and like puberty and all of that, but you're also just learning about yourself a lot more. So there's so many components to learning about yourself as well through high school that I think a lot of us, obviously, if you're in like your mid to late 20s, you can realize now. Maybe if you're in high school right now, it's kind of hard to realize what you might be learning or what you feel like you're learning about yourself. But I can assure you learn a lot more about yourself in high school than you may think. Although you may feel really confused and overwhelmed. I know I did. For me, thinking back on the things that I might have learned about myself in high school, I can definitely see where I might have gotten certain hobbies from, where I might have been inspired by my friends or inspired by a teacher or inspired by something that I learned about. And it sounds funny because like in the moment when you're in high school, you're like, I'm learning nothing from this. Or maybe you know exactly what you want to do. So you know what you're learning about whatever it is you enjoy, and that's inspiring to you. But for me, I know like looking back now, I can definitely see how in certain ways I may have learned about things like patience within myself and also with dealing with other people, and kind of like body positivity. That was a huge thing for me because when I was in high school, it was like, I think I started in 2009 or 2010, and then I graduated in 2014. So around then, it was very much still on trend to be very stick thin. And for me, I'm a little curvier. So that was a really big thing that kind of took a lot of my focus, and I always felt very uncomfortable and really like tried to conceal a lot of that for my body shape. And something now obviously that I've been able to learn is how to dress my body shape better, be very happy with it and be very proud of it and very comfortable in it. Whereas back then I can tell it was like a lot of really bad mannerisms kind of manifesting in my body language, in the way I carried myself, in the way I looked at myself, in the way I spoke to myself, like all these things. Even the way I dressed myself had a really big hand in that, I think. And it was just not really a matter of like working with what I had, but covering it to feel maybe a little bit more like smaller, maybe to reduce that discomfort in my body. It was so many different things. And so I know for me, so many of the things that matter and mean a lot to me now are definitely things that I kind of noticed in high school or things that I was inspired by in high school and that I picked up that have stuck with me up until now. So kind of like I said, patience, body positivity, mental health was a really big thing I also kind of started paying more attention to in high school. I started getting a little more interested in the concept of therapy, kind of how that impacts people, and a lot of that kind of stuff, which is all now like very important to me still. I think through learning so much about myself in high school, I very much was able to take those interests and kind of put them into my goals. And I don't really like to be very specific with that because I think goals are ever changing. So for instance, I can honestly say that's something I wanted to achieve at the age of like 17 that I thought would be really cool and really fun and definitely very pivotal for me in terms of career, I've been able to do by the age of 24. And I never would have been able to dream of even doing it in the way that I got to do it. And I can honestly say my goals have changed from then too. And I think that's a very healthy and normal thing. I don't think now, this year, I will be turning 27, that a decade later, my goals will definitely still be exactly the same as they were when I was 17. Because you're definitely under a different impression at a younger age. You learn a lot more with age. And then also, when you actually go through an experience that you might have dreamt about or thought so much about, you learn so much actually in that moment versus just dreaming about it, which I think is natural. That's a very normal thing to know and expect. So that changed my goals overall too. I guess that kind of leads me into a little bit more of learning about what you like and those next steps. Because I know at the very end of high school, that was a very big thing for me, where it came to the whole process of start to apply to colleges and universities. And then the last 5 months of your high school career, everyone's just like, did you hear back? Did you hear back? Or I heard back from this. Have you heard back from your favorite school or the school you want to go to or your favorite program? I was very happy with that experience, but also very stressed because I was just ready to take on a program that kind of handled a bunch of my interests. So throughout my high school career, I don't think it was any surprise that all of my hobbies, and I don't really know that I took part in many extracurriculars, to be honest. I don't think I did. I kind of stayed under the radar, and I just kind of focused on getting my grades up so that I could apply to the programs I wanted to apply to. But I definitely, by the end of my high school career, took a lot of classes that tied into my hobbies that could also apply to my program, which was media communications. So I wanted specifically to take a program like that because it was sort of this umbrella of everything that I not only enjoyed, but had a strong and still have a strong passion for. And it's something that I could utilize in really any industry and in any form, but it has a wide range of, I would say probably 5 to 10. Really, I can't limit it. It could have a lot of different roles that take place in different industries and in different workplaces all around. So I know something like that definitely included roles like marketing, social media management, definitely communications, something like PR. I could have done a lot of different things in film, radio, broadcasting, working with writing, whether that was journalism. And at the time, a really big thing for me was journalism, and I still really love writing. So I like to do that in my own spare time just for fun. But this program was something that encompassed all of that in such a really nice way that I got to learn about those guidelines and how those things function within the space in Canada, this media space. So I was really happy to be able to be aware of that at a young age, and also to be able to apply to something that I not only enjoyed and wanted to learn more about, but had a strong passion for. So I, to this day, I think about it and I'm like, how different would it have been if I took a different path? If I took a different program and had a different major and got a different degree, would I have enjoyed it as much? Would my grades have been any different? Would my experience have been different? I wouldn't have made the friends that I made. I wouldn't have had the exact same experience that I had. And I think thinking about that definitely makes me feel a lot more proud of the decisions that I made at a young age to take the program that I did, have the experiences that I had. And honestly, with all of the ups and downs that it included, I wouldn't have changed it for anything. So I think that had a really big impact on me. I definitely spent a lot of time in high school, with my friends, and how I spent my downtime was a lot of just watching my favorite shows, listening to a lot of my favorite music, kind of learning more about those artists and what inspired them to create the music they made, what stories might have been behind that. And then furthermore, doing the same thing with TV, which sounds probably a little nerdy because I was 17, 18 with my friends talking about movies and television. I don't know. I thought it was amazing. And it was just a very concrete thing within my friend group, I feel. So we were all really interested in different outlets in a way. Some of us were interested in photography, some of us were interested in music, some of us in movies, graphic design, makeup, hair. It was a lot of different outlets, and I, to this day, really do think that's incredible that I was able to be around such creative people that all had different aspirations within that one kind of creative sector. So I definitely think that impacted a lot of my interests and my hobbies. And I'm really grateful for that because it allowed me to experiment with so many different things I enjoyed learning about. And again, like taking this program was one of the more fun things I think I've gotten to do. And it sounds weird and probably a little lame because it's school that I'm talking about, but I really enjoyed it. And a lot of the things I learned about were definitely eye-opening. I think being in an experience versus learning about it is very different, of course, but I definitely can say I learned about so many things I didn't know I would enjoy being in school. And I took a lot of analytical skills away from that, which I feel like isn't a shocker, but I had to do a lot of writing on music, on media overall, on film, TV, kind of like what I've said earlier. And it was honestly amazing because I think if I had to sit there and write essays about things that I just did not care about, which I mean, don't get me wrong, there were some classes I had to take that would have been different too. But I got to write a lot about the things that I enjoyed, and I really loved that because it made my experience all that much more fulfilling, I feel. Now I've gone off on a tangent about university and like post-secondary, but going back to that whole thing of learning about yourself, I think when you focus on things that you enjoy, whether that's extracurriculars, whether that's your hobbies, so something you might just do on your own or maybe even with some friends, and then also like considering how you spend your downtime. I know for me, I spent a lot of my downtime, like I said, watching shows, reading a little bit. I read a lot more now than I did back then, I think, but definitely watching TV, reading, researching a lot of people that I really found fascinating too was a big thing. So I think looking at all of those things now, it's definitely no surprise that I'm working in what I'm working in now and that I've taken the program that I've taken and all of that kind of stuff. It all really interconnects, so it made sense for me. But I feel like along the way, I've definitely tried so many different things, and I've mentioned this a little bit in past episodes before, where I think the best way to learn about if you like something is just to try it, because you'll never know if you don't just do it. So I've definitely gone into certain things before and I've tried it and I've been like, wow, like this is so cool, I can't wait. And then I do it and I end up maybe not liking it so much. I've had that happen before, where I've had other things happen where I've gone into something and I've been like, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I end up loving it. So the only way to really know is just to do that. Sometimes the things that you think you'll enjoy, you might not, or you might absolutely love them just like you predicted. And in other instances, there might be things that you think you won't care about or really feel enthusiastic about, and you'll end up actually really enjoying it and feeling very motivated by it. So again, it's just a matter of what you like, kind of how that pans out for you, if it's what you expected, if it's what you wanted, if it's fulfilling. That's the most important thing, I think, because at the end of the day, you could work on so many different things and it could be fulfilling kind of on the outside, and maybe you feel good because you're getting a lot of affirmations from people around you and you're getting a lot of credit, and that can be really amazing. But at the end of the day, if those things are not connected to a sense of proudness for yourself or a sense of feeling excited for what you do or genuinely passionate about it, like if you're feeling anxious or you're feeling really sad or you're feeling really stressed and none of those things are from just like an instant and it doesn't kind of go away, it keeps happening, then I definitely think that's a different situation and kind of maybe telling you a little bit more about your body and your mind and what you need. So not to get super like philosophical, but I've had that happen before too, where I've entered something and I really didn't like it and I felt uncomfortable, and that discomfort got so strong that I was just like really brutally like beating down on myself in a way where I was kind of like, why don't I enjoy this as much as I should? Let's say, for instance, this is something that a lot of people would enjoy. Like those are the kinds of thoughts you're thinking. Then maybe it's something that you need to kind of recenter yourself on and be like, well, a lot of people could enjoy this, but if I'm not enjoying it, then that's what matters the most right now. So I think definitely looking at what you learned about yourself and what you like, and then carrying that on is a really important thing, but also knowing that those goals can change. A lot of those things that you want to do can change, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I actually heard something online. I don't know if it was like in a TikTok or if it was from a podcast. It might have been a TikTok of someone sharing something from their podcast, but it was someone saying this whole thing about how when you're in your 20s, it feels like it's a really weird thing. This isn't even about high school anymore, but it's kind of that same discomfort you feel in high school. You kind of sometimes feel throughout your 20s because you go through periods of times where, again, it's the same thing. Like, you are either making friends, you're losing friends. You might feel very alone. You might be going to a lot of parties and you might be loving it, or you might be going to a lot of parties and feeling alone, or you might not be going to any parties. And maybe your relationships are something that are kind of feeling a little stressful or needing a little bit of work. It's a really up and down kind of time. And so basically what this person had said was that your 20s, in terms of your adulthood years, because I think all of us enter our 20s being like, okay, we're adults now, like we need to get it together. I know for me, I felt a lot of that way. And now at 26, I can fully hear what this person was saying in this message. But without me rambling about it, I'm just going to say what they said. So they basically just said that being in your 20s as an adult are like being in your teen years of adulthood. So it's kind of this time that's going to be rocky. You're going to be learning a lot. You're going to be treading very carefully. Sometimes you might go in the wrong direction, but it's definitely that time for you to kind of reconfigure what went wrong and where you might have felt like you went wrong or what isn't right for you, and kind of turn around and try again. And you have that time to do that and to keep trying and to keep pushing and to keep figuring out what it is you're passionate about. Whereas your 30s are kind of like a little bit more of your first run at being an adult. So it sounds a little funny, but your 20s are like your teen years and your 30s are actually like your 20s in a way. I think a lot of people place pressure on being in your 20s. I know I do for myself a lot of the time. I know sometimes talking with friends, it's very easy for all of us to be like, oh my God, we need to have this situated or have this sorted. But I definitely can say that as I'm getting closer to 30, as scary as that may feel, I do feel really proud of where I'm at, and I do feel really content with where I'm at and the experiences that I've had, because I've been able to learn a lot more about myself and take a lot more away from that than I could have ever imagined. So that's a very big thing. And I definitely think that where I'm at right now, mentally and physically, is much better than where I was at like 21 or 22. Definitely much better than where I was at when I was 24. I think the last 2 years have been very pivotal for me specifically. So there's been a lot of discomfort. There's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of transition. And now I can honestly say I feel like I'm at a good spot because I'm having like a fresh start. So that's really nice. But I do want to kind of end this with the fact that I feel like high school, yes, it's a very awkward time. But in some ways, I think that awkwardness can carry on throughout life in different periods of time. So if you're in your 20s and you're listening to this, just know that if you're not feeling like you're in the spot where you're supposed to be, there's a good chance you're not alone, because a lot of people are not in the spot where they thought they'd be or where they want to be. But that definitely doesn't mean it's not like your time or that it's not going to happen. And it's never too late for that to happen. It just means that maybe you're going through what you're going through because you need to be there right now to get to the good part, to get to the next part that you've been dreaming about, or to even kind of start going in the right direction if you feel like you're maybe in the wrong direction. And yeah, your 30s, don't stress. Like, I feel like I'm not there yet, so I can't really say that. But having conversations with older friends, and specifically with my sister, because we have a bit of a bigger age gap, we talk about that all the time, where it's really not much different. Yes, you are a little bit older, but that doesn't mean that you're old. I think it means you have a lot more wisdom sometimes, and sometimes it means you have a lot more experience that you can learn from and know more about yourself from. So again, it's that same thing of just maybe taking the discomfort away by being more present and realizing you've come a long way and learning a lot about yourself. So I think the biggest thing is just that, like, again, high school is something that we all have to do, right? It's something we all have to learn from, and it's something that we just go through. And I think that's a really important thing. And, you know, if you're someone who's listening who maybe didn't complete high school, or maybe didn't get to high school, that's fine too. Because those years, like that age of being, I don't even know, like 13 or 14 up until 18, 19 are very formative years, and everybody experiences something completely different during that time. But the most important thing is that you're still learning about yourself. You're learning about your patience. You're learning about your goals. You're learning about what you like, your hobbies, and what's inspiring to you, and again, how you spend your downtime. So, whatever you might have been doing at that age, or whatever you're doing right now, if you are at that age, is totally fine. It's okay. You're learning about yourself. It's fine, and that's what you're supposed to be doing. So, yeah, that's that. I've gone off on so many tangents in this episode, but before I end this episode, I want to ask you a question. If you're in your 20s, do you in part feel like these years are more formative than your teenage years so far? And if so, in what ways have you noticed that in your life? I think for me, these years have definitely been a lot more formative than my teenage years, but I wouldn't take anything away from my teenage years because I think I had to utilize the awkwardness and the things I learned then to kind of get to where I am now, to have this awkwardness. It's just never going to go away. The awkwardness is always there. It's fine. But yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is the awkwardness just happens. It's fine. To answer that question though, and to have a conversation with me, you can do a few different things. You can either DM me on Instagram at the Trying Times Podcast. You can message me on Facebook at the Trying Times Podcast as well. Or you can leave me a voicemail sharing a bit more about your answer. Or even just say hi if you'd like. So if you're interested in any of that, it'll all be linked in the episode description below. So I hope to hear from you. I think that's it for today's episode. So thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you. And we'll chat again soon, okay? Bye.